basi inukia kile ambacho kwa ajili yake uliumbwa. Basi inukia kile ambacho kwa ajili yake uliumbwa. Usijivune juu ya masikini, kwa maana namwongoza katika njia yake. Wewe na nakuona katika hali yako ya uovu na kukufadhaisha milele. Na nakuona katika hali yako ya uovu na kukufadhaisha milele.
Usiniombe kile tusichopendelea kwa ajili yako, hivyo ridhika na kile tulichoamuru kwa ajili yako, kwa maana hicho ndicho kinachokufaa. Kama utajiridhisha nacho,
usiniombe
kile tusichopendelea kwa ajili yako, hivyo ridhika na kile kinachoamuru kwa ajili yako, kwa maana hicho ndicho kinachokufaa. Kama utajiridhisha nacho,
nakuona katika hali yako ya uovu na kukufadhaisha milele. Na nakuona katika hali yako ya uovu na kukufadhaisha milele.
Daima ila Mungu,
ila Mungu ndiye anaweza kukutosheleza.
Ridhika nami na usitafute msaidizi mwingine yoyote, kwa maana hakuna yeyote awezaye kukutosheleza daima ila Mungu.
Nimekuumba bora lakini umejidhalilisha mwenyewe. Nimekuumba bora lakini umejidhalilisha mwenyewe. Basi inukia kile ambacho kwa ajili yake uliumbwa. Basi inukia kile ambacho kwa ajili yake uliumbwa. Usijivune juu ya masikini, kwa maana namwongoza katika njia yake. Wewe na nakuona katika hali yako ya uovu na kukufadhaisha milele. Na nakuona katika hali yako ya uovu na kukufadhaisha milele.
Asante sana marafiki wa Tanzania.
Thank you so much, friends from Tanzania. And we really now feel it when the House of Justice encourages about promoting the arts and how it contributes to what we are engaged in. A pleasant coincidence is one of the songs they sang speaks to the theme of the session. And it's so inspiring. They made my work easier. So dear friends, early in the morning, we began our conference by looking at the first session, focusing on insights from the efforts of communities, but then paying attention to the first two paragraphs of the 31 December message. And here there was that question of friends learning together, but then what the friends have been engaged in the first phase of the plan, especially raising the capacity to intensify the programs of growth, paying attention to what it means to raise a third milestone cluster. At the beginning of the plan, the House of Justice gave us a goal that in around 160 regions and countries, there should be raised a cluster of proven strength that can serve as a reservoir of knowledge and resources. And this idea of a third milestone cluster has been the language that friends have been speaking. It has appeared in all our spaces and thinking about how do we progress towards this. So this has remained the central strategy of the 9-year plan, strengthening the capacity of a third milestone cluster and extending them to surrounding clusters. And the House of Justice in the first paragraph mentions that this has been made possible in many places by the coordinated efforts of international and home front pioneers. And as we were reflecting earlier on, we heard from the friends how the efforts of these international and home front pioneers are assisting clusters to move from one stage of development to the next. In this session also, friends shared how they're paying attention to this, in this process of raising a strong third milestone cluster. Within this cluster, teaching is happening, expanding nuclear is being raised, and friends are even enrolling into the faith in large numbers. And we are also seeing how friends are learning from each other, communities of proven strength, supporting those where experience has not yet accrued. And therefore, this continues to be the strategy. So dear friends, in this session, and we appreciate friends who really shared generously, but also we wish to encourage those who did not have a chance to share in the first session, that will continue as time allows to invite more and more to share. So in this session, we continue with this area of insights from the efforts of communities, but paying more attention to the features of a third milestone cluster. Our point of reference majorly will be paragraph 3 of the 31 December message. So friends, has already mentioned in the first session that since the beginning of the plan, a great effort has been to ensure that in every country, region, and in some places, sub-region or groups of adjoining clusters, we are able to raise a cluster of proven strength. And in this, we have seen that efforts have been made earlier on when Namarecho was sharing the numerical achievements. We saw how in our zone, generally, we have grown from 195 clusters to 239 clusters of such strength. But the question is whether they will suffice to serve the 800 plus clusters. So the challenge is we need to raise more and more of this. We have seen friends continuously appreciating the importance of strengthening the capacities of third milestone cluster and extending them to surrounding clusters as a key strategy of the 9-year plan. And in such places, friends have begun thinking beyond just the country. Once this is achieved at the country, then we move to the region, we move to the sub-region, and then groups of adjoining clusters. And in some, where we have many of such clusters, they're thinking of the same effort in villages and neighborhoods. And dear friends, we would also wish to emphasize or re-emphasize what the House of Justice has reminded us, that the goals that we set to ourselves at the beginning of the plan will not be achieved, will not be able to attain this goal if we do not raise these kind of clusters that are in nature sufficiently strong, resilient, and outward looking, that can assist those clusters that are joined to them. And therefore, in short, that without a strong third milestone cluster with proven strength, the plan's goals, objective cannot be realized. So just as a point of reflection, what does that mean to our country, to our region, to our sub-region, and at the level of groups of adjoining clusters? So when we started the plan, the national communities sat down, reassessed their clusters, and came up with projections. And in Redvan 2022, the House of Justice shared this outcome, that in total out of these deliberations, we have overall 22,000 clusters. And of this, 14,000, it is expected that in the course of the plan, the projections that we set for ourselves, by the end of the 9-year plan, it is expected that of these 22,000, in 14,000 will have raised a program of growth, and in 11,000 an intensive program of growth, and 5,000 plus embracing large numbers. And therefore we appreciate that every country, region represented here take a share of these 14,000, 11,000, and 5,000. So in this space is a moment to reflect, how far have we advanced in focusing or achieving this goal? But still it reminds us, for us to follow this goal and achieve it, then there is actually need to raise this strong third milestone cluster. Once again, in paragraph 1, the House of Justice mentions there is an urgent need to cultivate more broadly the capacities that are required to intensify programs of growth. And friends, we cannot accomplish this without more and more strong third milestone clusters that can serve as reservoirs of knowledge and resources. And therefore, the next phase really calls on us to think about this. In the 30 December 2021 message, paragraph 5, the House of Justice sets one of the aims of the series of global plans, that at the end of the current series, all clusters must be raised to an intensive program. And then we are called upon to ensure that swift acceleration towards this objective is followed, especially in the current 9-year plan. But then we are reminded that for us to do that, in paragraph 8 of that December, the House of Justice says, one important lesson that has become clear is the immense value to a region of a cluster where the third milestone has been passed. Once the friends in a given cluster have developed a range of capacities that such progress implies, and the means to disseminate insights and share experience about community building endeavors are in place, then a swift acceleration for the work of expansion and consolidation in surrounding clusters becomes possible. The House of Justice then sets this as another, or this constitutes one of the chief objectives of the plan, ensuring that the process of growth reaches this level of intensity in at least one cluster in every region through pioneering strategy and other support. Therefore, at this point, friends, it's good to pause and reflect as we conclude the first phase of the plan, of the 9-year plan. How has been the path towards achieving this chief objective? What have we learned about raising at least one cluster that serves as a reserve of knowledge and resources in a country, in a region, in a sub-region, or in groups of adjoining clusters? So we know much effort has been put in this, and we have made strides, and we have achieved this. The big question here is whether these clusters, one, they are sufficient to respond to this need, and two, they are also strong enough. And this takes us to the next stage, or the next level of reflection, where the House of Justice reminds us about this element of working with groups of adjoining clusters. Since this element was started or introduced in 2016, we have seen friends embracing such and ensuring that clusters are put in groups, but still in each of these groups, there is one that is strong. And if we reflect back, we see that much has been achieved in this area. In many places, we've made a goal of raising one. And in many places, some of these groups, all of them have this, all the clusters raised. And now they are thinking about supporting clusters beyond this group, but also extending this energy to villages and neighborhoods. But then as we begin this phase, there's a question of now, how do these clusters look like in terms of characteristics, in terms of strength? When we say a reservoir cluster, what does it mean? So friends have endeavored to raise that milestone clusters, but then we've been struggling with understanding its features and characteristics. Of course, the House of Justice has assisted us in many messages to know, for example, having hundreds of individuals supporting thousands, having strong centers of intense activity. And one element that we have struggled with is about the numbers. We have always thought a third milestone has to hit 100 activities, and that's a third milestone. We find ourselves in that danger. We are at 99. We are looking for one activity to cross the third milestone, and we struggle a lot around that. But the question is, are we conscious about all necessary elements? And therefore, friends, as we move to the next phase of the 9-year plan, the House of Justice helps us redefine these elements of a third milestone cluster and have a new perspective and think about what exists already in our third milestone clusters and what more we need to establish. And as we raise new ones, we do that with this consciousness that these are the features. So we will also pay attention, especially in the third paragraph of the 31 December message, that really the House of Justice helps us to understand the important features that describe or define a third milestone cluster. And these features include an expanding pool of human resources that are supporting the activities, enabling more neighborhoods and villages to sustain intense activity, sustaining effective cycles of activity, paying attention with these cycles, periods of intensity, and also other community undertakings that are contributing to achieving specific goals of a given cycle. So the question for reflection at this point is, how many of such clusters do we have in our countries? Looking at the third paragraph of the 31 December message, how many of such do we have in our countries, regions, sub-regions, or groups of adjoining clusters? And moving forward, what arrangements or what more is required to ensure that more of our clusters have such features for us to be able to achieve the goal? But then you realize that raising these third milestone clusters is not just about them supporting others. We remember the aim of the series of the global plans, the release of the society building power of the faith in ever greater measures. If we are to achieve this aim, dear friends, we begin to see indicators or glimmerings in such clusters. It is in these third milestone clusters that we begin to see elements or indicators of the release of society building powers of the faith. As friends begin to translate the teachings of the faith in their daily lives, they begin to think how to advance socially, materially, and spiritually. They begin to think about the promotion of the well-being of the whole society. And in these very clusters is where we see vibrant communities described in 30 December message being raised up. And we see larger and larger numbers of souls rising up to support these efforts and to own the processes. Here is where we see a rise of enkindled souls described in paragraph 4 of the 30 December 2021 message, especially in flourishing centers of activities in villages and neighborhoods. It is in these clusters, friends, that we see community spirit. We see a sense of belonging and fellow feeling as groups of families work together and as institutions of the faith begin collaborating with other local authorities to contribute to the well-being of the society. So then, as we are thinking of raising these clusters, we are thinking of movement of a population closer and closer to the vision of Baha'u'llah of building a new world order. So Shogi Effendi describes clearly of a process of progressive deterioration in human affairs, how it is occurring in parallel with other process, a process of integration through which the arc of human salvation, society's ultimate heaven, is being built up. We rejoice to see in every country and region true practitioners of peace occupied with building this heaven. We see in it every account of a heart being enkindled with the love of God, a family opening up its home to new friends, collaborators drawing on Baha'u'llah's teachings to address a social problem, a community strengthening a culture of mutual support, a neighborhood in neighborhoods of villages learning to initiate and sustain the actions necessary for its own spiritual and material progress, and a locality being blessed with the emergence of a new spiritual assembly. So these are the words of the Universal House of Justice in Ridvan 2024. And while reading this paragraph, we think about how does this look like in our third milestone cluster. So in this session, friends, we think deeply about how our third milestone clusters look like. what features exist and what is missing. What do we need to strengthen? But how do we pay attention to raising more and more of such, with understanding that without this, we cannot achieve the aim of the plan. So this remains the major strategy. So friends, in this session, we will encourage friends to share as much as possible these features that are present in our third milestone cluster, and how are we ensuring that more and more clusters also achieve this. So I know in different countries and regions we have many of such clusters, but we pick those we know that they can they have generated more experience that can help others also to embrace this learning process. So friends, in the first session, a pace was set. So we expect and look forward to maintain this pace. And Sama is worried how he's going to share about Nzasa or Dar es Salaam within 3 minutes, but you'll have to try. So I will invite friends from different countries to share. And in this sharing, it will be good to really pay attention on how these features are evident in the clusters and how the friends are ensuring that they are further and further strengthened. So we'll approach it the same way. We'll invite friends to raise your hands. We keep time. But yes, you share generously, but mindful of others. So we'll begin with Sama from Tanzania, followed by Susan from Kenya. And Sharifa from Central Uganda. Sharifa Nangobi, not Naigaga.
Allow our friends. I'll try and describe the Dar es Salaam cluster. So the Dar es Salaam cluster is currently sustaining 546 core activities with 3,339 participants. Educational activities are supported by a pool of 154 human resources. The Baha'i population of Dar es Salaam is approximately 316 Baha'is. The cluster has one neighborhood that sustains the participation of more than 300 children and junior youth. Furthermore, the cluster has built the capacity to train up to grade 4 of children classes and the ability to train all 15 texts of the junior youth program. The cluster is learning to follow the growth at the neighborhood level. It has a total of 491 neighborhoods. We are currently working with 45 of these neighborhoods, located across 8 sectors. These sectors are considered groups of adjoining neighborhoods. We have one group of adjoining neighborhoods, Mbagala sector, that has reached third milestone, containing 2 third milestone neighborhoods. There are efforts underway to assist the Mikocheni sector to have a third milestone neighborhood before Rizwan 2026. Of these 45 active neighborhoods, 15 have passed the second milestone, and 2 out of which are in the third milestone. Currently, there are 17 neighborhoods with junior youth programs, which is 38% of all the neighborhoods, 15 neighborhoods with children classes, which is 33%, 10 neighborhoods with study cycles, which is 22%, and there are 10 neighborhoods with group of families, which is 22%. The goal is to reach at least 50% of the 45 neighborhoods with educational programs and groups of family by Rizwan 2026. To manage these complexities, the cluster arrangements have evolved as follows. So the local spiritual assembly is a strong pillar of the cluster, eagerly supporting other institutions and agencies. To follow up on the neighborhood's growth, the LSA works with 8 sector administrative committees, which assist in coordinating 19-day feast, holiday commemorations, deepening activities, and relations with local leaders. The LSA is supported by a full-time secretariat with 3 staff members. To maintain a direct pulse on the growth, the LSA meets with 1 sector at a time every first Sunday of the month. An admin aide who is intimately connected with what's happening in the community meets to brief the LSA secretary every Friday. A strong local fund is another key element in supporting cluster activities. The LSA supports 90% of the cluster activities, including supporting Homefront pioneers, renting spaces, and supporting institute activities. The Area Teaching Committee consists of 13 members who form ATC teams within their sectors. In sectors with only one member, they serve as growth facilitators. Currently, there are 3 ATC teams and 8 growth facilitators. The institute is served by 9 cluster institute coordinators. They meet every Friday in their respective educational teams. In ZASA B, which is our advanced neighborhood, collaborative arrangements have helped coordinate activities. Teachers, animators, and tutors have been organized in teams, each supported by a collaborator. 63% of the junior youth in the neighborhood are in the junior youth groups. 27% of the children in the neighborhood are in the children classes. The neighborhood has 18 tutors, 6 of whom can train from book 1 to 14. The cluster maintains a 3-month cycle of growth. Planning now begins at the neighborhood level. This capacity has been established in 7 neighborhoods, followed by sector-level reflection spaces before the cluster-level meeting. This decentralization has enabled more people to participate in planning. The decentralization of the 19-day feast into 9 feasts has also increased participation. Furthermore, weekly reflection spaces, which are currently sustained in 6 neighborhoods, have proven effective in breaking down 3-month goals into weekly milestones and lines of action. A turning point in strengthening the unity of vision was the inclusion of the LSA into a regular trio meeting, forming the Quadro space, which has evolved into a collaborative space with 7 teams following specific learning objectives. In ZASA neighborhood, community vibrancy has also been increased through junior youth camps, family meetings of all families connected through groups of families, regular parent meetings, graduation ceremonies, and drama initiatives. Drama initiatives, apart from contributing to community discourses through arts, have also enabled some of the participants to enroll and to be closely connected with community building activities. Despite some notable growth, there are also a number of areas in the cluster that needs to be strengthened before the end of the first phase. This includes increasing the number of neighborhoods with educational activities to 50%, assisting another group of adjoining neighborhood or sector to establish a 3rd milestone neighborhood, bringing the total to 2, to systematize teaching efforts, to strengthen the specific elements of the growth milestones in the neighborhood level, and to systematize efforts that bring social transformation. Friends, this is just a very brief summary. For detailed analysis, we can reach out. Santi.
Okay, I'm Susan Busolo from Northwest Kenya, and I will share about Ndivisi. Ndivisi is a 3rd milestone cluster, and it also has its adjoining clusters, and it has strategies that it uses to help those clusters that are adjoined to it. One strategy is the use of visiting tutors, whereby Ndivisi have been sending tutors to its adjoining clusters. For example, Nalondo and Sitiho, tutors have been moving from Ndivisi to go there and assist them. And other strategy is the use of pioneers, whereby Ndivisi has trained some friends and moved to adjoined clusters to work as pioneers. For example, we have pioneer from Ndivisi who is working in Lukusi cluster, and pioneer from Ndivisi who is working or serving in Sitiho cluster. Another strategy is cluster visit, whereby other clusters visit Ndivisi cluster and learn specific experiences. For example, Namwela cluster visited Ndivisi and they learned on how to work with groups of families. And as now we are speaking, Namwela cluster is working with groups of families with the experience they gained from Ndivisi cluster. Another one was East Bukusu cluster, and they learned on how to have regular reflection spaces in their cluster, and that one also they learned from Ndivisi. As Ndivisi also is growing stronger and stronger and looking on how it can assist the adjoining clusters, it is also trying to help the or thinking about on how to extend the process from one village to the other to their villages, one to the other. For example, friends from the other communities, the VC community, have been learning from Namarambi and Wabuhonyi communities on how to sustain their activities in the communities.
I will share about Chiso's group of adjoining clusters. This group, before like at the beginning of the 9-year plan, it had 2 reservoir clusters, but currently it's having 3 reservoir clusters. Chiso's group of adjoining clusters has 7 clusters, of which 3 are reservoir clusters, 3 are milestone 3 clusters, and 1 milestone 2 cluster. To ease the flow of resources and knowledge within the group of adjoining clusters, we have been following up a strategy whereby each cluster, out of these 3 reservoir clusters, okay, the 3 reservoir clusters, each is attached to other clusters, of which, for example, Chiso's cluster is attached to Namwendwa cluster, Namasagali cluster is attached to Kamuli cluster, and Ibugaya cluster is attached to Kidera and Kaguru cluster. This has eased the flow of insight and resources within the group of clusters. And some of the strategies that we have been employing, one is the use of case studies that are generated within the reservoir clusters. For example, case studies are generated in regards to the elements that we are learning about in line with the different imperatives. For example, in regards to the spiritual education of children, friends have generated learnings from Chisozi and Namasagari cluster in regards to the intensive study of intensive class meetings during the holidays. And this has assisted clusters within the group to assist children progress through the different grades. But then also, there was also another case study that was generated within the 2 reservoir clusters, that's Chisos and Namasagari, about the social action initiatives. It being that Chisos cluster and Namasagari are having PSA programs, this has assisted friends to draw deeper into the social life of the community, and that other clusters have started benefiting from this. Then the other strategy that we have been using is the use of visiting tutors. For example, these clusters that are attached to the reservoir clusters, they are benefiting from the reservoirs, whereby human resources are taken to other clusters to facilitate the trainings and the seminars, and this has assisted in enhancing the progression along the sequence of courses. Then the other strategy that we have been also ensuring is the reflection spaces. For example, still there's attached clusters to these reservoirs are participating in the reflection spaces in the reservoir clusters. And this has facilitated the sharing of insights and experience, which are then taken back to the other clusters, such that we enhance the growth process in these clusters. Then the other element that we have also been enhancing within the group of adjoining clusters is the visiting, like other clusters visiting these reservoir clusters during the trainings and seminars. For example, when a cluster, for example, Chisozi is hosting a seminar for a certain book, friends from within the other clusters are invited to be part, and then within this seminar, friends are further taken to the different village of focus, and they have that practical experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear Sharifa, you mentioned about tutors from the strong cluster. Can you say more about that?
Thank you. Yes, maybe to share an experience. For example, in Chiso's cluster, friends have been deployed to Kamuli and in Namwendwa to facilitate the trainings. The same has been from Bugaya. Friends have been going to Kaguru, and even currently, friends from Bugaya facilitating Book 7 in Kaguru cluster, which is a Milestone 2 cluster. Then still even to Kidera, still with also Namasaga, because they are 3 reservoir clusters, is also assisting friends within Kamuli cluster during the start of the main sequence of courses.
Thank you so much, dear friends. So we'll invite Naume from Ethiopia, followed by Omid from Kenya, Musieba, and Abed Frederick from Tanzania.
I'm going to share some experience from Ethiopia, Addis Ababa cluster. So Addis Ababa is the capital city of Ethiopia and the third milestone cluster in the northern region. It has a population of about 6.7 million, and there are more than 180 Baha'i families. And currently, we are able to sustain 470 core activities. Out of those, 123 are educational activities. So as a third milestone cluster, Addis Ababa shows a certain defining features. And what I will share is how we are learning about these features through a bottom-up approach, focusing on one neighborhood that's called Takola. So Takola has more than 1,500 residents and has been a neighborhood of learning to over 10 years. So in Takola, we have teachers, animators, hosts, and tutors, which naturally requires team of friends. These teams are informal structures and follow different areas of action, such as children classes, junior youth groups, study circles, devotional gatherings, youth and women movements, and arts, and also other things. For now, I will focus on how the team that follows the junior youth empowerment program is progressing. So the team meets 3 days a week, and they are studying the training institute materials and discuss how they can assist the junior youth and also build strong relationships through different activities like football, open discussion about school, business, and other different aspects of life. And the cluster junior youth coordinator learn closely with them and also share their experience in reflection meetings to other teams. And also the team in Takola, they are even assisting other neighborhoods to organize neighborhood level camps on their school breaks. So all of the teams in this neighborhood are trying to do the same thing. They meet, they reflect on actions, they study universal laws of justice message, they share experience, and they also act together. And also the cluster agencies and some also regional institutions closely accompany this neighborhood, and they also share the experience to other places. And to support all these teams, we have a core team which meets regularly and closely collaborate with cluster agencies. So as I mentioned earlier, Addis Ababa is a very big cluster, and we have 44 neighborhoods which Baha'is are living. And we are trying to reach and assist them by sharing learnings from Takola using collaborators. And to share one experience, we have a nucleus collaborators, which are at the same time ABM assistants, also sector contact persons for the local spiritual assembly. So we meet with these collaborators monthly to reflect on efforts, to study universal laws of justice messages, and these collaborators will share the insights they gain from the meeting using 19-day feeds and other neighborhood level meetings. So another key formal structure is a cluster reflection space, which has been organized constantly. This space helps us to reflect, study, share learnings, and build unity of thought and vision. So by organizing constantly, we have been seeing growing participation across all ages and increased motivation from shared experience. So we use these cluster reflections mainly to share the experience we are gaining from Takola mainly. And also due to growth in responsibility to assist adjoining clusters, the number of coordinators has grown to 6 from 3. We have 2 coordinators for each imperative, and the ATC members to 7 from 5. So we are trying to systematize the way we share the learnings we are gaining. At the cluster level, we are working with collaborators and make use of different gatherings and meetings. In addition, as a third milestone cluster, with the responsibility to accompany other clusters, we invite friends to various spaces and send travel tutors. And also, we also send some friends from the third milestone cluster to visit adjoining clusters, to share experience, and also support one another at grassroots levels. Thank you.
Looking at, I'll be sharing experience from Malava, groups of adjoining clusters. So Malava group of adjoining clusters has around 5 clusters. And Malava is the most advanced cluster. And one of the element of a third milestone cluster that I'll be sharing upon is this element of how it facilitates the flow of resources and knowledge to other clusters. Of course, looking within that group of adjoining, then we have 2 third milestone clusters. But Malava, which has 30 localities, and 2 of these localities are third milestone, but almost 2 localities are unopened, but the rest are second milestone. And one element that these classes have been ensuring that of teaching teams, deployment of teaching teams. And one area is that during plannings within this cluster, they usually facilitate this by forming sizable teams that are sent to other clusters. Another element is that during planning and reflection spaces, some of these clusters, more so Buzozo, which is a third milestone but not that strong, some of the human resources within those clusters are invited to these clusters just to see some elements, evolving elements that pertains to reflection spaces and even planning. And then another thing is about deployment or of tutors. At one point, we were thinking on how we could raise more so tutors in Buzozo. And one element we could identify within Buzozo, we could invite few individuals to come to Malava. And within that, then they are trained together with some individuals in Malava to raise tutors. With that, then we could see that there is a lot of capacity that were raised. For example, in Buzozo, we didn't have a tutor of book 5. Currently, we have a tutor of book 5 and even book 13, up to book 13. Another element that could be seen is this element of raising coordinators in those clusters. And at one point, Buzozo, it was difficult even to identify someone who could serve in that class as a coordinator. And what we did was to invite few friends to come to Mwasoki Mangete, Center of Intense Activity, which is in Malava. So one area that we could identify, we assisted the friend to identify some objects of learning. And when invited, then this friend was connected to a coordinator who come or reside from that community. And with that coordinator, then some elements pertaining to coordination were assisted for this friend to be aware of. After visiting maybe for 1 month, so at first he came for 1 month, and then when he was going back to his cluster, then he was accompanied by the same coordinator to go and implement the plan that he had. And then another thing that we are doing to see that there is this flow of resources and knowledge to various clusters is this element of connecting villages. So, for example, in Malava, of course, we have 2 most advanced villages. But we have Kimangeti and Lutali. So in Lutali, we have 2 villages from one from Busia sub-region and another one from Kakamega sub-region that is connected to them. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much, dear Omid. So we'll invite Abed from Tanzania.
I'm going to share a little bit about the Ruunga cluster, and I will read what you have prepared. The cluster is made up of 4 wards with a population of 47,705 people living in 11,745 households. During the Redivant 2022, activities were carried out in 5 villages, and currently we work with the 7 villages. Believers during Redivant 2022 were 205, and to date they have increased to 391. Participation in the process increased from 1,258 by Redivant 2022 to 3,051 currently. The cluster has 36 family groups located in Mugajwali village. The expansion of human resources and community participation takes place through continuous consultation, unit of vision, intensive teaching of the faith, and institute trainings. The results of these efforts include an increase in participation in institute processes from 231 by Redivant 2022 to 838 by October 2025. And participation in core activities from 1,258 by Redivant 2022 to 305 by October 2025, an increasing of 139%. Efforts to strengthen and expand centers of intensive activity. Better understanding reality and open new villages are ongoing. Mugajwali serves as the reservoir village in the cluster. The current movement status is milestone 1, we have 5 villages. Milestone 2, we have 0 villages. And milestone 3, we have 2 villages. Cycles of activities and the regular rhythm of reflection. The area teaching committee schedules expansion and the consolidation phases of cycles. Institutions and agents meet to evaluate achievements made. There is a space of monthly reflection between the auxiliary board member and the cluster institutions agents. Mugajwali village, which is the most advanced village in the cluster. The village has a population of 6,564 people. During Redivant 2022, the process embraced 483 people, and currently participation has increased to 1,378, equivalent to 21% of the population. Believers during Redivant 2022 were 69, and currently there are 200 believers. The village has 1,306 households, of which 404 households have been reached, equivalent to 31%. Among these households, 288, which is equal to 71%, are organized in 236 family groups. Expansion of human resources and the community involvement through the active involvement of the assembly, accompaniment, unit of vision, and intensive teaching. Participation in the institute process has increased from 138 but relevant to 413 by October 2025. And the participation in activities increased from 483 to 1,366, an increase of 183%. There's not less than 17 people who participate in the conversation during each cycle. The capacity to embrace large number and increase complexity through formal and informal arrangement. Family groups operate in three hamlets, which is Ibohelo, Nyakianga, and Mogadwale. These hamlets contain 278 households, all are organized into 36 groups of families. There are 5 assistants of the auxiliary member board in the village. Community activities, teaching project, junior youth books, competition.
Dear Bet, you should be concluding, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, dear friends, to this extent, we have had a lot about some of these features present in our clusters. We have seen majorly how these strong clusters are facilitating the flow of resources and energy, and we have also had more how in more and more neighborhoods and villages we are seeing this process extending, and we're beginning also to hear in different clusters how cycles of effective cycles of activity are being sustained. So as we continue, as we bring in another team of friends to share, it would be good to hear more of these achievements as these achievements are recognized and these strengths and these features are discernible in our clusters. What is involved? What is the process that led to this? What are we learning about this? And this will assist as we learn and others also learn from us, but also think about next steps. So at this point, we'll invite dear Florence from Uganda, Emmanuel from Kenya, and Sungura from Tanzania.
Hello, my dear friends. I am going to share experience from Ngora cluster, which is one of the most advanced clusters in Eastern region, and it serves as a reservoir cluster to 4 adjoining clusters. The current reality of Ngora cluster is working with 22 villages, 13 localities, 4 local spiritual assemblies, and it has an ATC, and also it has institute coordinators. I'm not going to repeat the strategies which Ngora cluster uses for supporting adjoining clusters because the friends who have shared have already mentioned about them, but I am going to maybe share an experience of cluster visits. So Ngora cluster, being an advanced cluster, always hosts cluster visits, and this has served as an avenue of learning and raised capacity of resources in adjoining clusters. Thus that teams of friends are identified within adjoining clusters to come and learn on specific areas for maybe a period of 3 days. Among the areas, they have been keen to learn about working with a group of families, teaching, and then social action endeavors. As these friends go back to their clusters, they also go back and replicate what they have learned in the reservoir clusters, and as such, it has helped strengthen activities in the adjoining clusters. Then also on the area of reflection spaces, I'm going to share experience on orientation of pioneers. Ngora cluster gives support to adjoining clusters by bringing a team of friends who have been identified as pioneers to orient for a period of about 3 months. And during that orientation, they are assigned a virgin village. And as they are assigned a virgin village, they are accompanied by a team of friends from the village of intense activities to begin working with the 30 families for a period of about 3 months. And then after that, they are deployed to do the same in their clusters. This has helped the pioneers to have clarity on their role of pioneering as they are deployed to their clusters. And then also an experience on reflection spaces organized in Ngora cluster for pioneers. A reflection space was organized, and after that reflection space, one of the pioneers in the cluster had struggled to begin activities for about a period of 6 months. But after having opportunity to attend the reflection space, he generated insights and also went back to his cluster and strengthened working with 35 families. And within just 1 cycle, he was able to raise 7 teachers and enrolled 14 believers. And by Ridhivan, he was able to form a local spiritual assembly in just a period of 1 year. And now, as this term of service has ended, he has the following activities. He has devotional meetings 72 with the participation of 292. And then he has 23 children classes with the participation of 219. He has junior youth groups 16 with the participation of 179. Then the study circles are 8 with the participation of 54. And as he leaves the cluster, there is already a structure in place to support these efforts of the friends who are continuing to soldier these activities in the cluster. Thank you.
Alapa, dear friends. Yeah, so this is sharing from Southeast Region, Nairobi cluster. Maybe I might not repeat what the friends have shared, but maybe I will have to share a number of developments within Nairobi cluster as our 3rd milestone cluster. And one area that is coming out is strengthening the idea of working with the neighborhoods. Under this area, the cluster, as large as it is, we have been working with the 9 sectors. And at this level of sectors, there are structures, administrative structures, 3 in each sector. And at the level of the cluster, we have 58 identified neighborhoods. Out of these, 5 neighborhoods of focus from 4 sectors. And from these 5 neighborhoods of focus, we have 1 that has received a lot of support for the previous 1 year. And one of the things that we are learning to sustain is this expanding nucleus that is coming up from this neighborhood of focus. One area that is also coming as a new learning to this cluster Nairobi, as a way of engaging more people in the process. We have been able to identify this approach of developing some structures at the level of the sector. And at that level, then we have identified 1 sector which is served with some formal structures. We have an area teaching committee in 1 sector, that is Kayole cluster. It has served for 2 cycles now. We also have 3 institute cluster coordinators at the level of the sector who have also served for the past 2 cycles. So with this, we see that maybe we are trying to pay attention in this neighborhood of focus, which is found in Kayole. This is Moroto neighborhood. And as a way of being closer to this neighborhood, one of the coordinators was deliberately appointed from this neighborhood of focus. Aside from that, under the cycles of activities, the area teaching committee has been so systematic in following up with the cycles of activities. And we have got a number of areas that they are learning around during a cycle of activities, including organizing for cluster reflection meeting, and to enable to bring more and more people to participate in the reflection. They are learning to decentralize the reflection spaces at the sector level, where the members of the trio are invited to accompany each sector during such spaces. Another thing that we are learning around is in order to analyze the growth process of the cluster, they are also systematically having cluster trio meeting every cycle. Occasionally, we have the representation of the local assembly joining the trio, just to align with the growth process, how it's taking shape as an institution. However, there are a number of areas that are coming out, but at the level of the agency, maybe there is still more to be done to raise their consciousness. These are periods of great intensity that are visible within the cluster. One includes the junior youth camps that have started to happen, especially during the previous cycle. We also have some groups starting to take on junior youth service projects. Another area that is also visible, but we need to raise the consciousness to the cluster agencies. We have the graduation ceremonies, because this cluster is attached to a number of institutions, and graduations happens at the end of the year mostly. So we have had occasions where, at the Baha'i Center, a number of graduations have happened. We also have birthday, weddings, and burial services that has happened. So these are some of the areas that we see as areas where we need to gain consciousness to accompany. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Emmanuel. So, dear friends, in the course of this plan, one other area we are learning about is the growth of urban clusters, especially cities. And in our region, we have a number of them, and Nairobi that Emmanuel is sharing from is one of those. And with the complexity of the city, the question is, how do we approach growth to reach these millions of friends? So as he has described, the cluster is divided into sectors, but the cluster agencies, in collaboration with the local spiritual assembly, consulted and see how can they pay attention to a particular population center within the cluster and intensify or follow growth in this particular a section of the cluster, and do everything in this cluster similar to what happens out this area, similar to what happens to a cluster. So out of the 9 sectors he mentioned, the institutions identified Kayole sector as one area to learn from. And now for the past few cycles, they are seeing how to advance the process in Kayole as a cluster. So everything that happens within a cluster, the cycles of activity, administrative arrangements or collaborative arrangements, whether formal or informal, focusing on specific neighborhoods, and also trainings and other activities, just like a cluster. So this is a learning process in this particular cluster, just to manage the complexity of the city. Thank you, dear Emmanuel. Yeah, so this is a new element. So it's not something that may be applicable to all places, but it is something under learning, and we may not replicate these elements in every place. Thank you. So we continue with the sharing. We'll invite dear Sungura.
I'm so happy to talk about the third paragraph of this message, especially the second sentence of which talks about how these clusters and these villages do help each other in the cause of growth. And for this, I'll talk about the Alambe cluster, which in the beginning of this 9-year plan, we started with 10 villages, and of which 3 villages has started the program of growth. And from there, slowly we progressed, and now we are working with only 6 villages from this area.
Baada ya tafakari kufanyika ndani ya kijiji cha Titye kuhusiana na maendeleo ya cluster kwa ujumla, wazo lilipatikana kuhusiana na namna ya kuweza kuongeza idadi ya vijiji ambavyo programu ya ukuaji imeanzishwa, na sio tu kuvianzisha, lakini pia kusaidia hivyo vijiji kuimarika kimchakato. Kwa hiyo baada ya hizo tafakari, tulisaidiwa kuanza kufikiria mbinu ya kuvitenga hivyo vijiji katika makundi ya vijiji vinavyokaribiana, huku tukiunganisha vile vijiji ambavyo programu haijafika kwa vile vijiji vitatu ambavyo vina programu. Kwa hiyo tulitengeneza makundi matatu ya vijiji vinavyokaribiana ndani ya cluster ya Lalambe, ambapo kila kundi la vijiji lilikuwa lina angalau kijiji kimoja ambacho programu ya ukuaji imeanzishwa ili kuweza kusaidia vile vijiji vingine ndani ya kundi.
After the reflections initially in the beginning of the 9-year plan, so we discussed and decided that we need to group these villages into 3 groups, of which each group had 1 village that was most advanced or had started the program of growth that can help other 2 villages in the same group. And we started doing actions to this 1 village that has in each of the group.
Kwa hiyo mpaka sasa cluster ina makundi matatu ya vijiji vinavyokaribiana, ambapo tulifanikisha kusaidia vijiji vitatu kwenye yale makundi. Kuna kijiji cha Malalo, kijiji cha Kurugongo na kijiji cha Kablanzwili, ambapo mpaka sasa hivyo vijiji kimoja kina jumla ya shughuli 94, kingine kina wabahai 11, kingine kina shughuli 33. Kwa hiyo tulichojifunza mpaka sasa, hii mbinu ya kutenga vijiji katika makundi yanayokaribiana ni muhimu kuweza kuzingatiwa ili kuhakikisha mchakato unasambana, unafika maeneo yote ndani ya cluster.
We helped these 3 villages in these 3 groups, and each village started the program of growth, and currently we are trying to see how these villages can help these other 2 villages to have this program of growth. As he said that each group had varieties of activities started, and one village has 94 Baha'is, the other 33 Baha'is, and the other one 11 Baha'is. So each group has 1 cluster or 1 village that has started this program of growth with variety numbers of Baha'is.
Thank you so much, dear Sungura, and trying to keep time. So, friends, what's coming out clearly in this sharing since the beginning is 1, those clusters that are facilitating the flow of resources and knowledge, we are beginning to see a sense of ownership. They are concerned about the adjoining clusters and what is needed. But in this element of advancing growth in villages and neighborhoods and extending to the neighboring villages and neighborhoods, we are beginning to see this element of working with adjoining units of villages. So this is very important to note. Next, we'll invite dear Kazim from Southwest Kenya, Raymond from Southwest Tanzania, and Joash from Western Uganda.
Alaupa. Particularly, I'm going to share around one of the cluster in Southwest. called Ugenya, found in Siaya sub-region. This is one of the cluster in this 4-year plan. The first 4-year plan of the 9-year plan has been in 3rd milestone. And particularly when it started, it had almost 16 youth that they were working with. But this moment, they have around 48 youth that they're working with. By that time, they had 37 believers. This time, they have around 87 believers. They're working with groups of families. And the groups of families are 7 that consist of 35 families. This cluster also is working with the local authorities, and we had a space in that cluster organized by the local speech assemblies, the 2 local speech assemblies and the chief of the area, and 58 community elders attended. We also had seminars, and this seminar was for the tutors, where other clusters were invited in the region, particularly those clusters that are nearing to reach 3rd milestone. Also, we have the Institute campaign that has been used as a strategy, whereby friends from adjoining clusters and at sub-regional level are invited to study the Rui Institute materials. In these clusters, we are working with the 9 communities. And previously, we were working with 3 communities, meaning that we have increased with the 6 communities. We are also associating ourselves with other organizations that are available in the community. Recently, we linked with SHAFCO, whereby SHAFCO is one of the organizations that is really looking into how they can help the community advance educationally, and more so we have so many things they do with, but focusing more on education. And out of this meeting, we had 23 youth who had to start book 1 and book 3. And they are among the 48 youth that we are working with. But these youth, we are still linking them with existing activities. They haven't started any new activity. But soon, being that we are building their capacity, soon they are going to have their own activities as time goes by. Because we thought if they go directly and initiate this activity, at some point, sustaining is an issue. But they need to understand it from how other friends are doing it, and later they can have them. And because they build that capacity, we can sustain the numbers that are going to develop. Another thing that we have been using in this cluster is the reflection spaces, whereby we have cluster reflection spaces where the believers themselves come together and analyze their growth and try to come up with the plans that are necessary to help them move forward the cluster. And also these reflection spaces, we do it at regional level, we do it at sub-regional level, and also we do it at the level of adjoining clusters. Also, we have teams of friends from this cluster that is supporting other clusters in the region. And these teams of friends are those who are build their capacity in a given line of action. Thank you, friends.
Kabla ya sisi tutapenda kushiriki nanyi kidogo kuhusu namna ambavyo cluster bwawa ambao ni Papa ilivyo kuwa na msaada kwenye kutoa rasilimali watu na maarifa kwenye cluster zinazozunguka. Lakini kabla ya kufika huko Napenda kutaja kwamba bwawa Ipapa imeunganishwa na klasa zingine 5, hivyo kufanya jumla ya klasa 6. Ndani ya unit hii ya Ipapa kuna mabaraza ya kiroho ya mahali 6, kamati za ufundishaji za maeneo 3, na ndani ya unit hii kuna waratibu wa klasa 4. Klasa 3 ziko hatua ya 2, 1 iko hatua ya 3, na 2 ndo zimefunguliwa, zipo hatua ya kwanza. Tangu tunaanza mpango miaka 9, klasa hii ya Ipapa imekuwa yenye msaada kwenye klasa zingine kwa rasilimali watu na maarifa kwa namna tofauti tofauti. Kwa mfano imekuwa msaada ya kutoa marafiki ambao ni wakufunzi kwa ajili ya kusaidia klasa zingine kutoa kozi za taasisi ya Ruhi, hususan klasa ya zile ambazo ziko hatua ya 2 ambazo ni Chindi, Ipapa, Chindi, Ihanda, kwa ajili ya kusaidia kutoa kozi za kitabu cha kwanza, 3 na 5. Lakini pia imekuwa msaada kutoa kwa ajili ya kuenda kusaidia hizi klasa zingine ambazo zilikuwa bado kufunguliwa na kupata hiyo alama ya kwanza. Jambo lingine ambao kwa msaada kwa klasa zinazozunguka ni kutoa watangulizi kwenye klasa ambazo zipo kwenye kundi lake na nje ya kundi. Kwa mfano kusaidia klasa ya Tunduma Leje ambao zipo nje ya kundi lake, lakini kwa kundi lake itoa watangulizi kwenda klasa ya Chindi. Pia imetoa msaada kwa kutoa walimu wasafiri kwenye klasa vile vile ambazo ni Ihanda na Chindi. Kutoka kwayo kuna mpangilio ambayo tumeiona yenye msaada na itaendelezwa na klasa BOA kwa ajili ya kuwasaidia marafiki au klasa hizo zingine kuendelea kushadidishwa au mchakato wake kuchapuzwa. Moja ya mipangilio ambayo itaendelezwa ni Ipapa kuendelea kuwa kitovu cha utoaji wa kozi za taasisi kwa zile hasa ngazi ya unity, lakini pia Ipapa imeonekana imekuwa msaada kwenye kusaidia maeneo mengine, hasa kuhamasisha chaguzi za kibahai, ambapo kwa mfano tuna jamii ya Ipanzia ambayo inasaidiwa mara kwa mara Ipapa, Ipunga, Mponela, Chindi kwa kutuma marafiki huko kwenda kwa kusaidia kwa chaguzi zinafanyika na wanasaidiwa kuelewa utakatifu wa chaguzi wa kibahai. Lakini pia taendelea kutoa marafiki kwa ajili ya kusaidia viini vilivyopo kwenye klasa zizunguka, klasa ambazo bado hazijapata nguvu ya kutosha, kwa ajili ya kufanya kampeni za mafunzo ili kuzalisha rasilimali watu wa kutosha na hatimaye zinapata ukuaji ambao unastahili. Jambo lingine, taendelea kuendelea kuwa kitovu cha kualika hizo klasa zingine kwenye kutafakari ngazi ya unit lengo, ili kupitia hizi tafakari kuja pamoja watakuwa pia wanapata uzoefu wa vile ambavyo vile shughuli zilizopo ndani ya Ipapa vile zinaendelea kivitendo, na wanaporudi nyumbani au kwenye klasa zao inakuwa msaada, wanapata uzoefu wa kivitendo. Lakini pia itaendelea kusaidia hivyo viini kwenye upangaji mipango yao, namna kuhakikisha hizi klasa zinakuza uwezo wa kupanga hiyo mipango yao. Na kutaja jambo la mwisho, lakini jambo lingine, kupitia mawakala wa klasa inaonekana kwenye manufaa, sababu pia umesaidia kuimarisha shughuli zilizopo ndani ya Ipapa, ili klasa zingine zinapotaka kuja kujifunza kwenye hii klasa bwawa kunakuwa na uzoefu ambao umezalishwa ambao utawatajirisha marafiki hawa ambao wamekuja kujifunza. Kwa hiyo ni mpangilio ambao itaendelezwa kwenye hii klasa bwawa ya Ipapa.
Thank you so much, dear friends. So, friends, we are going to pick the last 4 people. We have Joash from Uganda, Dublin from Kenya, George from Tanzania, and Sammy from Kenya. So welcome Joash, followed by Dublin, George, and then Sammy.
Alaba friends, my sharings are coming from Rwampara cluster, which is one of the most advanced clusters in the region, and it is connected to the 5 other clusters within the group, one of which is in milestone 3, 2 in milestone 2, and 2 in milestone 1. So my sharings are going to based on the reflection spaces that are happening within Rwampara cluster, and we are seeing that within Rwampara cluster we are utilizing reflection spaces from different levels, starting from the cluster and to the village levels. So we see that at the cluster level we are having, the cluster is organizing the trio spaces, ATC spaces, coordination spaces, and the cluster-wide reflection spaces. And then at the level of the village level, we see that we have spaces for human resources, that is for teachers and mentors and tutors. And then we also have spaces for the devotional meeting promoters. We have spaces for local leaders, and also meetings at the level of the groups of families. So in all these spaces, we see that the friends really study guidance of the universals of justice, reflect on their action, share experiences, and then come up with the immediate next steps they have to take in the next cycles. So we have seen that has actually brought a common understanding within the cluster. So we see now the friends are having a common vision, of course, derived from the study of the guidances from the universals of justice. But also, during such periods, the friends are re-examining some of their approaches, methods, and strategies they are using, and they are thinking about the next steps to employ. Then we also see that during those periods, the friends' relationships are strengthened, because then we see they are coming together, and that has led to the unit of vision and purpose, especially in implementing the next steps they arrive at. But also we see in such spaces, we are collectively reading the reality, and of course that has led to, the clarity and the common vision of what steps are needed to be taken. Thank you so much.
I'll just talk of a few features in Nakuru cluster, that is in the central region. I'll start with the development of the human resources using the institute. So in Nakuru cluster, there's been spaces, mostly the basic ones is the intensive study and the study cycles, whereby there's been training of pioneers, like the revisit of the books, so that they can be able to handle the activities in the cluster, so that they don't have to be going back and forth, because maybe they lack tutors, they lack teachers or animators. They are trained to be both teachers, animators, and tutors. Another thing is the urge. After reflections, there's been an urge to train women so that they can take the children classes, because there was a women conference and the women were told that women are the first teachers of these children. So there's been an urge to start training these women from the cluster to be able to go through book 3, so that they can be able to handle children classes with the children in the community. Another thing with the raising of resources, we also have artists in central region, and in Nakuru cluster, there are those who can sing, music. So in Nakuru cluster, they have decided to at least focus on the message of Baha'u'llah and put it in words and put it in songs and music, so that they can be able to reach more people. So they are trying to bring forth funds so that they can be able to buy a small studio. They can buy maybe the equipments, and then they can use the Baha'i Center as their area of where they'll be producing their music. Another thing is the deepening during reflections, whereby before people undertake the institute courses, they're supposed to be deepened on how to carry out their service, so that when somebody starts from book 1, they're able to know that after this book, I'm supposed to go with the service of devotional meetings. So after that, the deepening, it helps us to have that quality whereby people are not linked to maybe the financial aid, or maybe the fact that maybe somebody wants to undertake these books because they know that maybe in future I'll be a coordinator. But not that. We are looking not at the personal benefits, but the collective benefits. So you want to, instead of using those distracted forces to attract people to the faith, at least they know what they are coming to do. So we are not looking at the personal gains. We are looking at the collective gains of the society. The next thing I look at, working with effective cycles of activities. Nakuru cluster, as like major, most of us, we are using the 3-month cycle. So in Nakuru cluster, much has been said by others about the expansion and stuff. So in Nakuru, we have 2 teaching teams, Nakuru cluster that is. We have 2 teaching teams. They have team leaders, and these team leaders are basically youths. So these youths, like they say, all must surge, but the youth must sow. With that, they are able to at least bring the youths on board so that they can be able to steer these teachings. So they are accompanied by the adults of the society. So these youths are the leaders of these teaching teams, and the 2 teaching teams are basically from Technology Neighborhood and from Green Estate. So these youths are the ones leading and steering this teaching act of service. Another thing is the LSA's contribution towards the teaching, whereby the LSA is able to contribute financially, and also it helps with building the teams. They are there to accompany the people into teaching, and also they are able to be part of the team that is going for teaching. Another thing is during consolidation, like they say the all must surge but the youth must sow. During consolidation, they are looking more at the youths, because now in Nakuru County as a county, there's a lot of crime. So bringing the youth on board and bringing them to them knowing the purpose of them being created is one of the strategies that Nakuru cluster is trying to use. Another thing is the women conference. After reflection, after the women conference and activities, during reflections, they discovered that there should also be men conferences, because they've discovered that these men are now being forgotten in the society. We are now focusing more on the women. Yes, they say the women are the drivers, yeah. But then, the women without the men, again, it is going to be disastrous. So, the women are more now, we are focusing more on women now than we are forgetting the men. So, with the equality of men and women, we are supposed to look at them as the same entity, not like different people, not like this one can do this one can not do this. So as we elevate women, let's also not forget the men. We are also elevating these men. And also,
thank you, Dublin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
George Kilunda.
I'm going to talk about Dar es Salaam, how is reserved cluster. So the Dar es Salaam cluster reserved as a saver cluster, providing support within a cluster by extending growth from one center to another, by drawing an experience from its advanced neighborhood, Ndasabi, growing is currently being disseminated into 45 neighborhoods. It has also been instrumental in providing support to all its neighborhood cluster. Dar es Salaam is surrounded by 4 clusters on its boundary, all which are third milestone cluster. 2 of those are strong milestone cluster that in turn provide support within their respective groups. This has mainly been achieved through making use reflection space where experience are shared and glow, analyzing in a captivating spirit, hosting friend in Zasa for immersive learning and learning through action, sending traveler tutor and resource person who provide support and connect to the nuclear of various corner with the advanced neighborhood, hosting intensive training session and field visit from neighborhood cluster agents, strengthening capacities. At all region level, Dar es Salaam provides support through the region by focusing in helping to establish, support and strengthening other several clusters. In the Pwani Kusini sub-regional, Dar es Salaam play a key role in helping to liaise Naliendele cluster as a several cluster, which in turn it can provide support in sub-region. At the onset of the plan, Naliendele was a first milestone cluster that has planned for many years with about 9 core activities touching 39 friends. By sending traveler Twitter, connecting to the cluster nuclear to the advanced neighborhood, and inviting key friends to spend weeks participating in activities in DASA, it was possible to raise the capacity of youth. Those youth in turn assisted the cluster in their reach of third milestone in less than 2 years. Naliendele current sustained 315 core activities with 1,293 participants. Furthermore, Naliendele assisted in opening and moving the Mtwara cluster to the third milestone using similar approach. This and many other similar cases serve to strengthen our appreciation of need to develop strong several cluster. Asante.
Asante, Bwana Kilunda. Dear Sami?
I don't think it will be difficult to keep time, given that much has already been said. I wanted to just go back to this paragraph 3 and talk about these features of that milestone, these common features of that milestone from the experience of Northeast region. So Northeast region, our neighbors to this property, we entered the 9-year plan with 5 clusters in that milestone, albeit with their own share of problems. And at the moment, we have 10 clusters in that milestone, and we have another 5 that are slowly, that we are hoping will be that milestone by Risban, including one in an area that is very fairly new to us, in Marsabit, where we are working with the Rendile population, and we have the pioneer here. So there is a number of features, and I think each group is trying to look at which features are there and which one are not there. And if I try to explain that in each of the clusters. I don't think I'll be doing justice. So looking at enabling a growing pool of human resources, or raising a growing pool of human resources, we have a number of our that milestone clusters are focused largely on raising human resources, increasing the number of the pool of human resources. And in this case, you'll allow me to go back to this example where we are raising this cluster in Lysamis cluster. So we are trying to see how we can mobilize about 100 protagonists in support of the community building endeavors. And the processes are so far in 4 villages. And although it's an area of learning, so this is where in the last few months we've been able to raise the first contingent of tutors, and we are looking at how in each cycle then we are able to raise more human resources. And one interesting thing in terms of the 10 tutors that have been trained in this place is that because of the dire need, then every human resource that is raised then is connected to a number of activities. Looking at how we are enabling more villages and neighborhoods to sustain intense activities, this is not seen in all our that milestone clusters. We have 3 that are showing more of this, and they are familiar with how many villages and neighborhoods that they are working towards. So for example, the neighboring Kiambaa cluster is working to have all the 16 villages or neighborhoods and small towns to sustain intense activities. And so far, 5 of them are sustaining. They have developed the capacity to plan. And they are at different levels in terms of the growth process. And whatever is being learned, to the question that dear Councillor Lynette asked around what are we doing to see these features in place. So in each of these, we are trying to identify what does the cluster need to learn next in terms of these features, and have them in spaces where they are able to learn. And so we are having, for example, Kiambaa hosts a number of spaces which help them to learn on what is the next feature to work on, or what is the next horizon for each of them. In terms of sustaining cycles, let me first speak about embracing large numbers and managing complexity. I see, is my time up? All right, okay. So let me first talk about embracing large numbers. And the reason I want to talk about it is because it's where we are not doing very well. When the friends in Dar es Salaam shared, I wanted to put down my hand so that I don't have to share. So in terms of embracing large numbers and managing complexity, we do have a few clusters that have been learning this aspect of groups of families. And for example, in Kiambaa, we have 15 groups of families, but these are not in one neighborhood. We are looking at all these 5 neighborhoods where activity is present. We are looking at how we can use this as a strategy that helps us to have the community itself take ownership of the process. And therefore, the groups of families is an informal arrangement that is really helping us to ensure that we are able to the process is not just directed by a small team at the regional level, but then there is a number of collaborators that are learning about this. And so in 3 out of the 10 milestone 3 clusters, we are generating some insights around this informal arrangement of groups of families. And we do see a number of initiatives arising from these collaborative arrangements. In terms of sustaining cycles, our clusters are in a continuum. And if I look at, for example, Kiambaa, Kiambaa cluster has had 71 cycles of activity, uninterrupted cycles of activity. But we do have that milestone cluster where sometimes we have to strengthen this aspect of reflection and the cycles that are happening. And so in across our clusters, we are trying to be clear on what it is that we've learned and how we ensure that in the next cluster we are able to strengthen that feature, while at the same time looking at the next horizon.
Thank you so much, dear Sami and the friends. So, dear friends, the purpose or objective of this session was to really share as much as possible about these features of a third milestone cluster. And we have heard from different countries and regions identified clusters and sharing a bit of these features. But then, of course, we went ahead and a number of us shared the strategies and processes involved to raise our clusters or to establish these features in our clusters. But still, there is more to go deeper. One thing I wanted to point out is one additional thing we learned is this feature of facilitating the flow of resources and knowledge. We had an experience from IPAPA where beyond just supporting adjoining clusters with resources and activities, they're also thinking about administrative capacity, and they're helping in the adjoining clusters on how to conduct the election of the local spiritual assemblies, which was a very good point to note. We didn't speak much on the first feature, raising a substantial and expanding pool of human resources. But one thing I'm sure is not that it's not there. Maybe we paid much attention to the rest. So this is something to consider. As we are breaking for lunch, after lunch, we will proceed to our groups. And these groups are at country level for small countries, Eritrea, Ethiopia, South Sudan. It will be at country level, and the others will be at Kenya, Tanzania and Uganda, country level, but we'll break further into regions. And for Kenya, we go straight to regional level groups, and we'll have further breakout. But during this, dear friends, just remembering the session and the focus of this, raising this kind of a third milestone cluster, not just one, but also multiplying a number of them. Yeah, it was mentioned already, and it has repeatedly been mentioned since we started the plan, that we cannot achieve the aim or our goals without raising such a cluster. So in this group or breakout session, we will identify one cluster that will have concrete analysis of these features. But then as we think about these features, as a team, as a country, a region or a sub-region, we need to reach units of thought about related capacities that are needed to be reinforced. As we analyze and assess this particular cluster and use it as an example, we have to be clear about what has been learned and what is yet to be learned. And then when this is clear in this analysis, then as a country, a region or a sub-region, we have to come up with next steps. Of course, for Kenya, our next steps will be concrete and direct because it's our national gathering, as it was mentioned by the chairperson of the National Assembly. But then the other countries who just have representatives, you will see what will be your next steps and where will it lead it. But ultimately, in this area, we want to see what are the next steps of raising multiple such clusters in our countries and in our regions. But again, we are here to pause and look back the journey or distance that we traversed in the past 4 years. So we should not feel like we did not achieve. First of all, let's celebrate what we have. because hearing from each of you since morning, all of us, we've made a stride ahead since the beginning of the plan. So it's a moment to reflect, celebrate of these achievements, assess the path, what was involved to reach this level, and then determine the way forward. But this way forward has to be very deliberate and strategic because it's leading us to other new horizons. So we have to be very strategic. Of course, it also entails what we didn't achieve and what more is needed. So even thinking about the capacities and strategies that are required to ensure that we make next step. The friend from South Sudan shared we have a cycle, and they strongly believe within this cycle will raise a third milestone cluster. What does it mean in other elements also in terms of concluding this phase, but as we prepare to begin the next phase. So dear friends, we have facilitators amongst ourselves. During lunch or after, they will tell everyone where we need to go. And in this phase, we have 3 sessions that will run through until evening. And we will see you again at the plenary tomorrow.
Wachukuzi wa jina la Mungu katika siku hii. Ninyi ni wachukuzi wa jina la Mungu katika siku hii. Mumechaguliwa kama ghala za siri yake. Mumechaguliwa kama ghala za siri yake. Inampasa kila mmoja wenu kudhihirisha sifa za Mungu. Inampasa kila mmoja wenu kudhihirisha sifa za Mungu. Na kwa mfano wa ishara za uadilifu wake, kwa vitendo na maneno yenu, kwa vitendo na maneno yenu, na kuwa mfano wa ishara za uadilifu wake, kwa vitendo na maneno yenu, kwa vitendo na maneno yenu.
Fikiria maneno ya Yesu Kristo aliyowaambia wafuasi wake alipokuwa anawatuma kueleza hoja ya Mungu. Yeye aliwaambia, ninyi ni kama moto ambao katika giza la usiku umewashwa juu ya kilele cha mlima. Acheni mwangaza wenu ung'ae mbele ya macho ya watu. Ninyi ni chumvi ya ulimwengu, lakini kama chumvi ikipoteza ladha yake, itakolezwa na nini?
Acheni sifa zenu ziufundishe ulimwengu, na kwa kupitia kwenu waweze kutambua na kuvutiwa karibu zaidi kwa Baba wa mbinguni, ambaye ni chanzo cha utakaso na neema. Acheni sifa zenu ziufundishe ulimwengu, na kwa kupitia kwenu waweze kutambua na kuvutiwa karibu zaidi kwa Baba wa mbinguni, ambaye ni chanzo cha utakaso na neema. katika mji wowote mwingiao, kutangaza na kufundisha hoja ya Mungu. Kwa vyovyote msitarajie kupewa nyama wala zawadi yoyote kutoka kwenye mji.
Na pale mtakapoondoka kutoka mji fulani, mnapaswa kukung'uta vumbi kutoka miguu yenu.
Na pale mtakapoondoka kutoka mji fulani,
na pale mtakapoondoka kutoka mji fulani, mnapaswa kukung'uta vumbi kutoka miguu yenu. Kama mulivyoingia humo kwa usafi bila unajisi, ndivyo mnavyopaswa kuondoka kutoka mji huo. Kwani kwa hakika ninasema, Baba wa mbinguni daima yupo nanyi, anawalinda na kuwaongoza. Pale mtakapoondoka kutoka mji fulani, mnapaswa kukung'uta vumbi kutoka miguu yenu. Na pale mtakapoondoka kutoka mji fulani, mnapaswa kukung'uta